So I'm going to deviate a little bit from my typical podcast episodes on how I do things. Let me set the scene for you. So I have a mug of bone broth right here, and I make probably about 1 to 2 batches a week right now, because making whole chicken is like my new, I don't know, I love it. It's the best thing ever. I don't know why I didn't ever make whole chickens before. I think I was just really intimidated, or I thought that it had to be a special occasion, but my goodness, it's like my favorite thing right now. So I'm at the dining room table right now, and if you hear any kind of squeaking, that is the chair that I'm sitting on. It's very old, it's wooden, it's got a lot of character to it. So I'm going to try not to squeak too much throughout this podcast episode or really hit the table. I know that can cause some issues. But today I really want to talk about candle making, if you guys are cool with that. I know I typically talk about all different topics regarding candle businesses, but today I really just want to talk about candle making, specifically because of this email that I received today that kind of brought me back to something that I think would help anybody that is new to candle making, or if you had ever struggled with this, because I think that people just getting into candle making, there's a lot of things that you don't think about until you've really gone into candle making and understanding all the little things to think about. So she gave me permission to kind of give you a synopsis of the email that she sent me. So Sarah had reached out a few months ago with some questions on just troubleshooting candle making. So it was specifically with being short on wax when making candles. She said she's using my formula, but she's still short on wax. So she told me that when she's making 3 candles, as an example, she ended up only having enough wax for 2.5 candles. She said, I tried measuring in ounces, and when that didn't work, I measured in grams. She said she thought it was a scale, so she got new scales. And she was just saying, what am I doing wrong? She's sending me screenshots, and she has this beautiful, wonderful Excel spreadsheet of the candle making formula, which is just amazing. So I actually kind of like when I have to troubleshoot a little bit to try to lead people in the right direction. I'm trying to figure out what is it. And I usually have like the top 3 things that are usually the quote unquote issue with whatever situation somebody is going through. And I try my best to help when I can. I mean, I get, quite a bit of emails, and I try my best to get back. But I was able to get back to her. And so I had I responded to her email. And so my first thought with that email that I really noticed was when she told me that she was making multiple candles at a time. So my thinking was, have you tried just making 1 candle at a time? And are you short with just 1 candle? Because if you start off candle making, and I know a lot of us do this, you're getting excited, especially nowadays with how much information is online. When you're really excited to get started on something, and you just want to make a lot at once. So you just want to, I don't want to make just 1 candle. I want to make a bunch. But, that's not necessarily wrong. And she specified, she's trying to test multiple wicks. So I get, when you're making the same scent, it's easier to pour multiple candles. But if you're wanting to make sure that you're pouring accurately and you're having the correct net contents per the vessel that you're working with, you do want to make just 1 candle at a time. Make sure that that is correct, and then have some kind of device. I started off with just aluminum foil to mark where the fill line is. Because when you're pouring in the wax and the fragrance oil into the container that you're working with, and it doesn't have a fill line, you don't know where to fill it up to when you're then making multiple candles. So that was my first thought, is maybe you should just make 1 candle at a time and see if you come up short with just making 1 candle. So she told me that she'll try it out and see, and then she ended up reaching back out. And she said that she did try to make just 1 candle at a time, and she was still short. So she was sending me, photos of the jar on the scale and pouring everything in there and what it looked like. and how it was short. And so my next thought was asking her pour temperatures, and figuring out that information, because there's, again, a couple things that I think about when I'm looking at these troubleshooting questions. And so she had told me that she adds in the fragrance oil to the wax at around 155 to 159 degrees. And then she says she thinks she poured somewhere between 140 and 145. Now, I want to specify, or I guess start this off by saying there's nothing wrong with that. I know that when I first got started with candle making, I remember I think it's called like the Alex method. I don't know. It's been so long since I've thought about low pouring because I'm such a high temperature candle maker. I love high temperatures. No matter the wax that I work with, I always work with higher temperatures. And by high temperatures, I mean like 190 and above with everything that I do, bringing the wax up to temp, adding the fragrance oil, and then pouring right around that temperature, maybe a little bit less than when pouring. We don't even check the pour temperatures, to be honest. I do not check the pour temperatures. Chris does not check the pour temperatures. It's just stir in the fragrance oil at a hot enough temperature. That's all I care about, is that it's over that 185. Mix in the fragrance oil and then pour right after about maybe 30 seconds or so. I think that when it comes to pouring at a lower temperature, there's a lot of cons that come with that. And specifically in this instance, I was thinking that there may be some leftover wax in the pouring pitcher when pouring at that low of a temperature. So that's what I had recommended, to pour at a hotter temperature, because when you have a hotter temperature, it's not going to solidify as quickly in the pouring pitcher as it would if you were pouring at a lower temperature. I remember when we're talking, let's go all the way back to 2019 when I was making candles on my balcony. You can go back on my YouTube channel and see these videos. Is I was making candles on my balcony, and I remember, oh my gosh, just thinking about this is like, this is so not the way to make candles, but I didn't know. And specifically working with soy 10. So it is what? Fall, winter time, something like that. Like, it's cold outside. I'm on my balcony making candles, double boiling. And I am trying to pour at a low temperature. So I'm trying to wait until the wax is at like, I don't know, 135, 140 in the pouring pitcher. And it's like, it's like that half solid, half liquid state. And I just remember thinking, like, this is like almost solid in the pouring pitcher. I don't understand how this is supposed to be working. It's super cold outside. Even thinking about the candles that I had poured outside in the cold, just the shrinkage that happened with those because they just cooled so quickly. Thinking about that is just so funny thinking back. But that was my first thought, was, okay, is there leftover? Like, is there so much leftover wax in the pouring pitcher because of how cool she's pouring? So fast forward to yesterday, she gave me an update on her candle making. And she said that she wanted to follow up about, the conversation on troubleshooting and all that. And she said that it worked. And she said that she was pouring the wax at too low of a temperature. She said, which is crazy because I was following the instructions for the wax. And that is something that, again, I notice with a lot of waxes. And specifically, I didn't know what wax she was working with, which I guess I could have asked that question. But for the most part, unless it's like a very crazy difference, like if she was working with beeswax or something, if she was working with beeswax trying to pour at 140, it wouldn't even come out of the pouring pitcher. It would be solidified. Beeswax is crazy with the the high melt point wax. It's crazy. So with this, it just kind of gave me insight to troubleshooting, I wanted to let you know, I thought that you might find this interesting on how my mind works, somebody's, issue, problem that they're trying to work through, and then how my mind works when it comes to troubleshooting and when working with certain waxes, when working with temperatures, because I think that temperature in candle making is the most important part of the candle making process by far. I mean, obviously there's like the math involved and all that to make sure that you're getting your ratios correct. But besides that, when it comes to performance, temperature is everything. I work really hot with all the waxes I've worked with, even 464. And I know there's people out there who very much have, like, they swear by the low temperatures. They swear by, letting the wax cool down to a certain amount before pouring, and it yields a really good result. And I don't doubt that. I think that different candle making strategies will work for different people. And as I mentioned before in a video a few months back where I was talking about, making cookies and baking is very similar to candle making in different ways, and how, little changes in different environments and different equipment can yield a different result with what you're trying to make. So I get that it works different for everybody, but when I think about having to wait until, 140, 145, even 150 degrees in the pouring pitcher to pour, my first thought is the time that it would take to wait for that temperature to come down that could be utilized for more candle making, which I guess you could just put that pitcher off to the side and then just get started on another one. So you could make it very efficient if that works for you, which I know that's what probably a lot of people do, is they just have multiple pitchers going on. That's the only way that I could think that would actually work with that lower of a temperature. But like, for instance, soy 10, I can't do a low temperature. I cannot pour at a low temperature. But again, I know it works for some people. It's just never been my personal experience that it's worked for me. And again, even with 464, and 464 is one of those waxes that, man, everybody has a different way of making candles with 464 and different opinions. And, I haven't worked with it enough to have like a solid opinion on it. But from the questions and the problems that I have gotten from people that watch my channel reaching out to me and having so many questions about, why am I not getting a hot throw? Why does my candle look like this after burning? There's so many things about 464, which is 100% soy, that has a lot of negatives to it. I understand if you're wanting more of that, like, quote unquote, like purist kind of candle of just 100% soy and, no paraffin or no anything else in it. It does come with kind of the negative side where you don't get as pretty of a candle and maybe not as good performing as a candle. But I say that, and then I see other candle business owners that are absolutely killing it in their candle business. They're doing so good, and they're using 464, and many of them have been in business for a long time. And 464, I think, is more of like an OG kind of wax. Like, it's more of like a wax that's been around for a while. So I feel like a lot of candle business owners got started off with 464 and started off their business that way, and that's just what they know, and they know how it works, and they've worked with it for so long. And that's kind of how I feel about soy 10, to be honest. But when it comes to choosing a wax, I feel like 464 is not the most beginner friendly wax. I would definitely not consider it that. I also think that if you're going to choose 464, you should know kind of the little characteristics of a 100% soy wax candle. So when you are trying to choose fragrances, just making sure that they are fragrances that work well in soy wax, because especially if you're working with a smaller diameter container with a one single wick, you have to really try to get a fragrance oil that's going to perform really well with 464, and it's really going to give you the best performing candle. And in my experience, 464 has a really good cold throw, but the hot throw is kind of like maybe like a 5 to 7 out of 10, depending on the fragrance oil you're using. But in my opinion, if you're wanting to still do a 464 and you're really kind of just really have your eye on having a 100% soy candle, I recommend choosing a vessel that has 2 or 3 wicks. Because if you're wanting to have a really good hot throw, you want to have a bigger diameter container, because the bigger the volume, or the bigger, I'm sorry, not the bigger the volume, technically the bigger the volume, but the bigger the diameter, it's going to have a bigger melt pool, which is going to allow the fragrance to disperse into the air in a higher amount at once. So it's going to help the hot throw. Even if you're working with a wax that, may not have the best hot throw with just kind of getting started with candle making and trying to figure out all the little ins and outs of 464. And again, I'm not saying that that's a bad wax or that people don't have good results with it, but man, is that a back and forth controversial, people have strong opinions either way on 464. And I don't think that I would ever personally use it, just because I know that there's so many other waxes that are way easier to work with. You don't have to, like for instance, with the wax that I use, which is soy 10, we don't have to worry about craters, uneven surfaces. We never have to heat gun the tops. They're always smooth tops, and it just saves so much time. I couldn't imagine having to go through and heat the tops of my candles. I don't know. I just feel like that would just be so much extra work on top of everything. And that's how I feel about 464. I'm like, I just feel like it's just a little bit extra work and a less pretty candle, and maybe a less quality candle, just for, being able to say it's 100% soy. But I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. Again, I haven't been able to work too much with 464. Although I did make an essential oil candle, which was the first time. That's a video on my channel with 464, and it actually turned out pretty good. I was surprised. 464 and essential oils, I was pretty surprised that it actually ended up being pretty decent, which I was very surprised over, because you just never know, especially with essential oils. And I wouldn't actually make a candle business with essential oils. That was my thought process when first getting started with my candle business. When I thought about making candles, I thought, okay, I want to make beeswax candles with essential oil, because I wanted to have the most natural, pure, non-toxic kind of candle. I'm sure we all possibly had that mindset in the beginning, and maybe some of you do have those candles, but I just felt a little bit more limited with that route than going the route that I did end up taking, specifically when it came to creating my brand and all of that, and what kind of fragrances I wanted to have available. So that was something that I had to keep in mind when I was actually creating my business, and if it was going to work with it. And I almost didn't start a business because of that, because I'm like, oh man, I don't want to have fragrance, and I wanted essential oils. I very much had an essential oil mindset for the last, the decade prior to starting my candle business. I almost joined an MLM. Isn't that crazy? I almost joined Young Living, which is the essential oil MLM. This was back in 2013, 2014. I purchased the starter kit from somebody that I found on YouTube talking about essential oils. I was a full blown I ingested essential oils. If that will give you any indication, I was ingesting essential oils. If I had lemon water, I had lemon essential oil water. I can't even, oh my gosh, Erica. Thinking about that now is just crazy to me. Although I will say, I had something that I would make called magic tea. and it was Thieves essential oil. I think it was Thieves. Yeah, it must have been Thieves from Young Living. And I would put that in my lemon ginger tea. And then would I also do peppermint? I might have done peppermint. I can't remember. And man, I will say, even though I do not condone ingesting essential oils, it did very much help whenever I was sick. And I would also make it for my sister and Chris also when they were sick. And also putting it on like the bottom of the feet. I have nothing against essential oils. I just don't think you should ingest them. But I obviously live to tell the tale. So here I am. But yeah, when it comes to essential oils, typically you want to diffuse them and not make them in candles and burn them for different reasons with like, there's certain essential oils you definitely don't want to burn in candles. So, that's something good to know. But that was my mindset getting started with my candle business, was thinking, I want to have like the most pure candles that I possibly can make. And then you get into the research phase and realize that there's so many other options available. And sometimes it can be challenging and also very, very, very expensive. Could you imagine making a 100% beeswax and 100% essential oil candle? That candle would cost like probably close to $20 depending on the size, just for the cost of goods. Oh my gosh, that would be so expensive, incredibly expensive. So yeah, I have different opinions on different kinds of waxes. I feel like I'm also kind of set in my ways with the wax, the formula, what we're used to. There's so many varieties. There's so many options. There's full 100% paraffin wax candles. And then there's the other spectrum of like, coconut and soy candles, or even beeswax candles, and everybody has different opinions on what's good, what's not good, what's harmful, what's not harmful. Now I'm just rambling. So, yeah, I decided I just want to talk about candle making today, I guess. I felt like I was going from topic to topic. So I don't know. Did you guys enjoy this? Being able to talk about candle making, troubleshooting, my thoughts on 464, wax, temperature, all that kind of stuff. I do like talking about this. I know in my recent video, a few weeks ago, I was talking about, how I prefer talking about the candle business side. And here I am talking about the candle making side. But there are certain things with candle making that I do enjoy talking about, specifically when it comes to troubleshooting, helping you guys out, because I know that there's a lot of things with candle making that can be extremely confusing and overwhelming. And it's just nice to, be able to troubleshoot and figure things out. And I do have a whole troubleshooting video on YouTube as well that you can look up if you're wondering, about hot throws and what's wrong with your candle and all that kind of stuff. But I think I'm going to end today's episode right here of just, rambling on about candle making. And yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And I will see you in the next one.